Dr. Thomas Phillips, lecturer in law at Liverpool John Moores University. Thanks for accepting that interview today.
It's okay. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So let's start with Abdullah Ocalan's situation. He has been held in isolation in prison for 23 years now, since 1999. He has been denied visits from his family and lawyers. There are now concerns about Ocalan's health and whereabouts. Can you comment on this treatment, first of all?
Yeah, so Mr. Ocalan is, of course, a very important figure for millions of Kurds around the world. And he has, as you know, formulated some interesting ideas for how to begin to resolve the so-called Kurdish question, or the question of how to accommodate two nations within a single state, which I'm sure we'll talk about perhaps a bit later on. For those reasons and more, and just for basic reasons of human dignity, I think that Mr. Ocalan should be permitted regular visits from his family, regular visits from his lawyers. In other words, he should be entitled to the full benefit of his basic human rights. And I also think, more than this, Mr. Ocalan ought to eventually, or as quickly as possible, be released from his prison cell as part of a meaningful peace deal or a peace process with the Kurdish portion of Turkey. And finally, I think the isolation of Mr. Ocalan, the refusal to grant him access to lawyers and to family members, is in itself indicative or reflective of the way that Turkey is currently treating the very serious issue of how to accommodate the Kurdish population.
You have mentioned the importance of Öcalan. I would like to underline that what is the importance of freedom of Kurdish leader Abdullah Öcalan and delisting the PKK from forbidden organizations. This, as you know, many people are saying keeping PKK on the list and keeping Mr. Öcalan under isolation is two different faces of same coin, same problem. How would you going to evaluate that?
So I think Mr. Ocalan has proved himself over the years to be a number of things. Firstly, a very innovative and interesting thinker about how to accommodate two nations, namely Kurds and Turks, within one single state. His ideas about democratic confederalism, about women's rights, about the rights of minority groups, about cultural pluralism and how different ethnic groups and cultural groups can live together. Those ideas are very instructive and very educational, not just in the context of Turkey and the Kurds, but in the context of similar issues more broadly across the globe. So he's an innovative thinker, and he's also proved himself to be a person who is seeking some sort of a peace arrangement, a peaceful solution to this problem in Turkey. And that's been proved throughout the history of Mr. Öcalan's leadership of the PKK. So his ideas about self-determination within Turkey and democratic confederalism should be engaged with, rather than treating him as nothing more than a criminal that should be isolated on a prison island. And if he were to be released, if Mr. Öcalan were to be given his freedom as part of a peace deal, I think that would indicate that Turkey is finally beginning to deal with the injustices that it's inflicted upon its Kurdish population ever since it was founded as a republic and before then. And it would prove that the country is moving into a more pluralistic and democratic future, which is long overdue. Finally, on the PKK as an organization, I think delisting it from the list of proscribed terrorist organizations would serve many useful functions. We can't talk about all of them because of time constraints, but I'll just pick two very briefly. First, it would make it much more difficult, I think, for Turkey to justify dealing with the Kurdish question or the Kurdish issue purely in terms of security and terrorism and anti-terrorism. If the European Union, if the United States, if other countries were not prepared to go along with this, and to say that actually the PKK is not a terrorist organization and it has some legitimate demands and some legitimate grievances, then it would be much harder, I think, for Turkey to securitize the whole issue. And finally, it would make it much more difficult, or it would take the edge off the criminalization of the entire Kurdish community that goes on, as you, I'm sure, well know, not only in Kurdistan, but it goes on also in the European Union. So for a number of reasons, that's why that should be done.
Thanks for underlining that two very important reasons as well. Another issue is Turkey is getting more and more repressive in its treatment of the Kurds. As you know as well, this must have a bearing on how Western allies view the Kurds. What can we do to shame our governments into acting in favor of their values of human rights and justice that they claim uphold.
Yeah, I think you're right to add the word claim in there, the things that they claim to uphold. States like the US and the UK do, of course, frequently claim to uphold things like human rights and justice. And in some cases, it's a legitimate claim. But, as we all know, a quick examination of the UK's overseas record right now, or the United States, will reveal that it is a claim and they don't actually care too much about human rights and justice overseas. It's a secondary consideration, really. To matters of money and economics and politics and everything else. But in terms of how we can go about pressuring or shaming governments into actually doing the things that they claim to do, I think in a situation such as the Kurdish one, the most important thing to do actually is, frankly, to engage with the US public, with people in the United States of America, because for all of its waning power, although the US isn't the only state that influences Turkey, you also have Russia and China and others now. The US is still by far and away the world's global superpower, right? And it can have a lot of say in what Turkey does internally and what it does about its Kurdish question. So I think addressing the American public is probably one of the most important things that can be done, because it's US citizens who can put the most pressure on the US government to change their policy direction on the Kurds in Turkey. So I think a deceptively simple answer, of course, would be to address the American public, educate them about what's going on in Kurdistan, and go about things in that way. That would be my suggestion.
Thank you. Lastly, what is your message for the Kurdish people, as it's the 23rd year of the international conspiracy approaching? What is your message? How would you going to comment on the period of that time?
So I think my message for Mr. Ocalan would be that your ideas in particular about women's rights, about minority rights, about alternative ways of organizing a complex human society, alternatives to the European nation state form, which has been so destructive anywhere that it's been implemented. Those ideas are inspirational and educational. My message to the Kurds would be a fairly simple one, really, which is that your demands and your grievances are legitimate ones. Demands for things like education in your own mother tongue, for economic development in the Kurdistan regions, for recognition of your identity in Turkey, for some sort of autonomy like they have in Scotland or the Basque region or Catalonia, for some sort of self-determination within Turkey. These are all perfectly legitimate demands. And over the course of time, it may feel like the chips are stacked against you, but they have been for lots of other communities through history as well. And they have come out of the other end and won. And I think the same will be true for the Kurds eventually. You will win.
Dr. Thomas Phillips, lecturer in law at Liverpool John Moores University. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for your valuable comments today.
It's okay. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Perfect. Amazing. To the point, as always.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's enjoyable when you do it with lecturer, or you know what I mean. It's you guys talk to the point perfectly and spot on.
Yeah, I wasn't that well prepared for this, to be honest. I've been rushing around all day, so I just took some notes about 10 minutes before you called. Hopefully it's not too terrible.
That's more than enough, as you see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. No, I enjoy doing these things as well. It makes me
nice
makes
one.
me think about stuff. And
Nice one. I will email you again anyway. Lovely day to you, and take care.
You too. Nice one. See you soon.
See you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.